In this video, we're going to cover the default style tab in the GIS window. Now that we have a couple GIS layers imported, just editing anything in the default style tab is going to affect that layer visually on the 2D map display. I'm going to change the color of the line to green, and the dash style, that's just going to be the style of the line. I'm going to make that dash. Line cap and line join I'm going to leave as the default, but that's just the style of the end of the line. And thickness I'm going to go with 2, and I like leaving the thickness unit in pixels. It just seems a little bit easier. And I'm going to click on apply, and you'll see that our states layer has been updated. And we have the fill option, so I can fill the layer if I wanted. If I select white and click on apply, you'll see the layers filled. I'm going to change this back to transparent. And visibility, if you uncheck this checkbox, it will just make the layer disappear. And minimum and maximum scale is actually pretty important. You're going to want to set this up for all of your layers. Maximum scale is just saying that this layer is always going to be visible no matter how much you zoom out, and that also applies to minimum scale. So it doesn't play a role right now, but if we had a whole bunch of layers loaded in here, you wouldn't want all of your layers to have a maximum scale of infinity. It would just slow the system down. So if we had changed this to say 200 and click on apply, you'll see that we don't see this layer. But if we zoom in, at some point that layer will be visible based on that value that we put in for the maximum scale value. And there it is. So 200 is a little low, but you can go back in here and bump that up. And I'll leave the states at a value of infinity so you can always see it. And over here we have all of our text characteristics. And you'll notice on the map that we don't see any text. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one being that the maximum scale value is way too low for how zoomed out we are on the map. So that would have to be increased. And another reason is we don't have a label selector, so we're not telling the system what to label this layer. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to set up my label selector, and I'll cover that in a different video. And that's just so I can show you how some of these text styles work. Okay, now I have my label selector set up for the states. So I'm going to increase the maximum scale value to 10,000. And I'm going to increase the font size to 24, which is the maximum value, and click on apply. And you'll see now we have our state labels. So just like the line for the layer, you can edit all the text. We can change the color and click apply, and you'll see the color is changed. You can also change the font type, the font weight, and click on apply, and you'll see that's been changed. Now the font stretch, font style, and font weight, these all work, but they work depending on what type of font that you have selected. So they're not going to work for all the fonts, and depending on the font size, it's just not going to pick up some of those characteristics. We can also apply rotation here. If I plug in 90, you'll see that the state name has been rotated 90 degrees. I'm going to change this back to 0. And the text placement, we can move the text for this layer. If we plug an X and Y displacement in, it'll move that text. I'll plug in 300 and 300 and click on apply, and you'll see that label has been moved over 300 on the X axis and 300 on the Y axis. And you can change the horizontal and vertical alignment if you want. I'm going to leave that in the visibility checkbox. That's just going to display whether the text is visible or not.